Today we are watching a program called United Nations and World Disputes, and this comes from, believe it or not, the United Nations Film Division, and this was published all the way back in 1950, which is interesting because, according to me, the United Nations only got started after World War II, so this was made in the immediate aftermath of the Second World War, which is interesting because that's around the same time the United Nations first was founded, so we should be getting to see a very early United Nations, which I don't know quite why that's supposed to be so interesting, but I have a feeling this is going to be very interesting. So let's just jump in, shall we? Or let's dive in. How about that? This might be like the first disputes the United Nations ever had to deal with, right? 1950, United Nations got started in 48 or 47, around that time. So this might be one of the very first applications of the United Nations. So let's see. Yep, there's the title, The United Nations and World Disputes. That's interesting. That's an interesting title already. Because for me, the purpose of the United Nations is to settle world disputes. Hang on, we already had a little bit of an audio blip right there. I don't know if we missed a lot of information, but we definitely didn't get it all.
Plans for final victory in World War II.
The Big Three laid plans for... Oh, right, yeah, we have skipped over a lot of information just by a few audio mistakes here and there. So we're not getting the full foundation of the knowledge that we were supposed to be getting, but I think we can make do with what we have still.
Control of Germany. But more important, Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin dedicated their nations to the foundations for permanent peace through a United Nations.
So these guys are deciding on how to split up Germany, but even more than that, they're talking about an idea that goes beyond just...
More important, Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin...
Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin. See, this is a crazy image right here. Winston Churchill, Theodore Roosevelt? No, it's the other Roosevelt. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And Stalin, yeah, what a crazy image. It's crazy that these three guys are the founding fathers of the United Nations, you know? This is the Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin of the United Nations right here.
Dedicated their nations to the foundations for permanent peace through a United Nations organization.
Through a United Nations organization. So yeah, we really are talking about the very beginning. The fact that they're establishing for us the purpose of the United Nations just tells us how early in this organization's history we are right now.
Crushing Germany from the east and west, the Allied armies met at the River Elbe. And
crushing the Germans from the east and the west, the Allied armies. You know, it is interesting that even during this time, we did consider ourselves allied with the Soviets. It's just I don't know, it's hard to imagine that we were allied. It's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's we weren't allies, but we weren't enemies. I don't know, it's a hard relationship to explain, especially with what has happened since all this.
Joined hands in celebration of victory. Russia and the United States, with their allies, had fought the good fight together.
Russia and the United States, along with their allies, have fought the good fight together. I feel like that is a very important thing to remind us all, is that the US and Russia aren't naturally enemies with one another. We've actually fought on the same side of wars for most of the wars that we've fought in. It's just it's important for us to remember that we're not natural enemies with these people. We can get along and we can actually work together. And when we do work together, we defeat the Nazis. You know, it's just I don't know, it's interesting to see everything from this perspective.
Final victory was in sight. Man's hopes of lasting peace were high.
Man's hope for lasting peace were high. See, that is sad. It's sad that people actually did believe that World War II was so damaging that there might never be war again. You know, it's I kind of wish it was. It's weird. I wish enough had been destroyed where war would never happen again. It's just that's not really how war works, you know?
But the great architect of victory was not to see the final triumph. Suddenly, President Franklin Roosevelt was dead.
The great, you know what? That's funny because I was about to say, like, I'm pretty sure Roosevelt wasn't there. I was expecting it to be Harry Truman, right? Wasn't he the actual American president at the end of World War II? So I guess, but that makes sense. Roosevelt died while in office, and he served more terms than any other American president. So I don't know. That's another little history lesson right here for us.
Throughout the world, he left in the United Nations.
But hang on, so this is FDR's funeral? This is footage from FDR's funeral? I feel like that's pretty cool too, that we're getting to see it at least. You know, it's not cool that FDR died, but it's cool that we are seeing like an American president's funeral all the way back then. And not even an American president. Like FDR was, at least in my opinion, probably the best president, at least when it comes to like, I don't know, his wartime resolve. You know, it's just, this is a very honorable ceremony that we're watching right now. We're lucky to get to see FDR's funeral like this.
Organization, the framework for lasting.
It is also crazy that he died in the middle of the war. Like that is, I don't know, that's just quite crazy.
On Earth. World War II ended, and in Tokyo Bay, General MacArthur.
Wow, that was World War II ending right before our eyes. Did you guys see it? That was the emperor, or at least I think this is the emperor, Hirohito, right? Him signing surrender documents, right? Like this is literally World War II ending with the stroke of a pen right here. You know, like when people say the pen is mightier than the sword, like that pen just saved pretty much like the entire population of Japan, you know? Like that's just, oh, that's wild. I don't know if this is Hirohito actually. It doesn't look like Hirohito, but it looks like another Japanese official.
General MacArthur spoke for all.
That's crazy that like General MacArthur was the one to accept the surrender of the Japanese. That's just, again, more good history for you.
Ended. And in Tokyo Bay, General MacArthur spoke for all people. Pray that peace.
All right, so this is General MacArthur. This is like the guy who suggested we like nuclear bomb all of Korea just to clear it up for us.
Be now restored to the world, and that God will preserve it always.
Seemed like a bit of an underwhelming speech, to be honest. But, you know, knowing that half of the soldiers on that boat couldn't even understand him, I bet it's fine.
Meanwhile, in San Francisco,
hang on. So this is San Francisco. This is, when was this? 1950? This is 1950s San Francisco. I wonder if they still have the trolleys. Oh, don't they still have the trolleys, though? Yeah, maybe that's a dumb question to ask, actually.
Delegates of 50 nations had met to form the United Nations organization.
Delegates of 50 nations. What's funny is there were probably only about like 75 or 100 nations back then. You know, like there were so many colonial territories that even if you did collect all the world's nations, you would still only have like 50 or 70 or so. I'm curious about the nations that were left out of this meeting, though. Like, I'm curious if there were any real nations that were left out and like why, for what reason, you know?
President Truman came from Washington for the signing of the historic charter.
This would be really historic, though. Like, after World War II, if all the world's leaders got together in one place and signed, like, peace accords, like, I do understand why people were so hopeful that peace would just continue indefinitely. Like, this does feel like something that marks a change in, like, human behavior on Earth. Obviously, it didn't, but I get why people bought into it as it happened.
Foreign Minister Molotov of the Soviet Union lent his presence to the...
No way, freaking Molotov was at this meeting. That's another such a funny little detail. Like, I never would have guessed that Molotov would have been here, but I guess it makes sense. I guess he was an important Russian figure, wasn't he?
Solemn and hopeful expression of man's resolution to...
Wow, look at this office building, too. Like, already, I feel like this is what it still looks like. All these flags, I bet if we took a really up-close look at these flags, we could find some cool ones, but they're too grainy, they're too not detailed to really do that.
Full expression of man's resolution to live in peace.
Dang, look at how this guy's writing with the pencil, though. I love that little detail as well. He's almost writing with it backwards, you know? I remember having a friend in school who wrote like this. But it's just, you know, it goes to remind you that, like, not everyone grew up writing with pens and pencils the same way we do now, you know? Like, this guy clearly does not know how to handle a pen the same way that you would be taught in school nowadays. It's just, like, that's such a good little detail of, like, the times, you know?
The nations were united. The Big Five, China...
Yeah, see, like, this guy knew how to sign, but the Chinese guy did not. And that's, like, that's a notable difference.
China, Russia, Britain, France, and the United States led the people...
That's also really funny how those are, like, the founding five. Like, the U.S., British, France, Russia, China. Yeah, those are like the big five. Obviously, those are still like some of the most important countries nowadays. It's funny that some other countries with like millions more people were just completely left out as well. Or at least left out at like this level. Like only these top five members get to decide on like most stuff.
Of the world as they launched a rule of international law and a bill of human rights. A rule of law they believed no nation, large or small, would dare defy. The United Nations was set up.
Wow, look at this hall. See, this is still the same hall, right? This is in New York, or at least I think this is the building in New York. Like, I'm pretty sure this is still the same hall that people meet for the United Nations nowadays.
A tribunal empowered to mediate international disputes and to enforce its decisions.
Mediate international disputes and to enforce its decisions. I think that second part is going to prove to be the bigger challenge, right? Like, it's fine for you to make a decision on what's right or wrong, but to actually enforce that countries do things that you say without any actual power, I guess, like, how would the United Nations enforce anything?
Soon, this machinery was put to the test.
Oh, this is going to be cool. Are we actually going to get like the examples of how they did this? This is going to be really interesting.
In Indonesia and elsewhere,
Celebes. See, I know nothing about this island in particular, or like the political history behind this island. So if there was like a dispute surrounding this, that's new information to me. So I really hope we're going to learn some cool stuff from this.
enforce its decisions. Soon, this machinery was put to the test. In Indonesia and elsewhere, people felt the strong desire for independence.
In Indonesia and elsewhere, people felt the strong desire for independence. So maybe this isn't about that one specific island, it's more about all the collection of Indonesian islands. But I guess, were the Dutch still in control of Indonesia even after World War II? I wonder.
In Indonesia and elsewhere, people felt the strong desire for independence and the control of their own destinies.
All right, so yeah, the Indonesians desire control over their own destiny. So we might learn about like Indonesian independence from this.
And this had been seen in the United Nations Charter.
Again, these are just like Indonesian village people, I assume. Like this is a good little insight into like the daily lives of Indonesian people, which Indonesia is a place that very seldom ever gets mentioned in old programs like this. So this is maybe the only shots of Indonesia I will ever see on this channel.
A Republic of Indonesia had been set up, embracing a large part of the island empire.
I like the spikes for the coconuts or whatever these seed things are. Like that's it's a very simple tool, but it seems effective.
The Republic of Indonesia had been set up, embracing a large part of the island empire, which had until then been under the rule of the Netherlands.
Oh yes, under the rule of the Netherlands. So this is the Dutch East Indies? Or this is just the Dutch Indies, I guess. I feel like everyone forgets that Indonesia was just controlled by the Netherlands too. Like that is a bizarre pairing, honestly.
Civil unrest broke out in the Republic and the
See, this is cool. We're getting to see the civil unrest. What does civil unrest in the year 1950 look like? You know, it looks like an absolute unending sea of people and wherever this is. That's really what civil unrest looks like right here. It's just tons of people.
and the other islands.
Like, look at how many people. I don't even, it's like probably like 1 million people right there in that. Dang, look at this. This is probably like the first president or first dictator or first, independent leader of Indonesia for like the last 100 years. That's crazy. I wonder if there are any Indonesian viewers. I wonder if any of these faces are familiar. Maybe this central guys, but what about the guys around him? Like, are all of these people well-known historical figures in Indonesia or not even? I don't know. I have no idea.
Although the Netherlands had recognized the new republic, differences arose, and the Dutch began military operations.
Really? I didn't know that at all. So the Dutch recognized that the Indonesians did deserve independence, but for some reason they had disagreements, and the Dutch are actually employing their military against them. See, this is a conflict I have never heard about before. I've never heard about the Dutch-Indonesian pre-treaty conflict or whatever. So this is very interesting. I am definitely learning some real history right now. And I feel like this is something that no one else remembers either. But again, whose tanks are these? Whose jeeps are these? Like, is this really the Netherlands army, or is this the American army by way of the UN? That's what I'm curious about too. Oh, there's a big church though. That's nice. It's interesting that there's a big church in Indonesia. Isn't Indonesia mostly Muslim? I don't know.
In July 1947, the hostilities in Indonesia were brought to the attention of the Security Council of the United Nations.
All right, so in July of 1947, the instability of Indonesia was brought before the Council of the UN. So that's very interesting. Is that the very first case in the UN? Is the Dutch East Indies or whatever? I'm so curious now.
The council immediately issued a ceasefire order.
I like this guy's title, President Canada. Like, I hope he's not the actual Prime Minister of Canada. His name is President Canada. I hope he's like the British Foreign Secretary or something. His name is just President Canada. Obviously, that's not the case. I don't recognize him. Who was the Canadian Prime Minister or President, I guess? See, I thought Canada had a Prime Minister, not a President. It might have a President and a Prime Minister, but I thought the Prime Minister was the important one. I don't know. But this is honestly before Canada is an independent country, though. Canada, at this point, is still under the domain of the English crown. So that's interesting for multiple different reasons, especially in the UN. It's weird that domains of the British crown still had representation as an equal country within the UN, even before they were independent. That's interesting. But who is this guy? Do any of my Canadian viewers know who this guy is? I probably look so dumb for not knowing who he is, but I honestly couldn't tell you. He's not Wilfrid Laurier, I know that much.
And appointed a committee of good officers to aid in the peaceful negotiation of the dispute between the Netherlands and the Republican leaders.
See, it is so funny though that they posit the UN as being this unbiased, organization. But at the end of the day, it's those big five countries, the US, UK, France, Russia, and China, who are deciding everything. So you might get your way, but who's to say this is really even any more fair than just how it originally was?
Guided by the United Nations Committee, the two parties to the dispute signed a truce in January 1948.
All right, so they're signing these treaties. So what was the dispute? See, that's my curiosity more than anything. What was the actual dispute that led to this, confrontation? I wish they would go into depth and explain it to us, but I have a feeling the only actual dispute is, well, if we let you be free, then you owe us $500 billion in debt or something. I think that is the actual dispute. A lot of the times when these European colonies would gain their independence, the thing that the Europeans really wanted was money. So if they could have these people buy their independence by owing these countries billions of dollars, they would do that. They would take that deal. So I have a feeling that was the dispute in this case, is that they wanted the Indonesians to pay the Dutch a certain sum of money for their independence, to have this debt for 100 years of the country's future history as well. And the Indonesians probably did not want to do that. They probably just wanted independence and no freedom debt, which is fair, totally fair. But it's tough to make that deal when you don't have a military and the person charging you does have a military. It's just it's very clear that they were trying to take advantage of these colonies even as they were on their way out.
Hostilities broke out again in December.
See, so what happened? So hostilities broke out. They signed these treaties for independence and they're still fighting. See, this is the history that I want to know and understand. It's why? Why were the Dutch fighting a war against the Indonesians post World War II? For what reason? To what end?
Jakarta, capital of the Republic of Indonesia, and many other towns in Java and Sumatra fell to the Netherlands forces.
See, but what do they mean by that? These towns and cities fell to the Dutch forces? Did they just bomb these cities? What's the conflict here? Why are the Dutch bombing Jakarta? It's because they're not ensuring that this country pays them a debt for the next 100 years or so. There's no other conflict to be happening here. Like, I don't think the Indonesians had military equipment on par with the Dutch. Like, it just seems like they're bombing cities to make a point. It's not like, oh, we need to bomb a city because there's a military stronghold here that we got to get rid of or anything. It's just like, all right, well, they're not going to accept our terms. We'll bomb a city until they do. That's what it really seems like. It seems like they're just trying to intimidate the Indonesians into signing a deal that will ultimately not favor them. I don't know if that is the case. That's just what I'm reading based on this.
The Republic adopted a scorched earth policy as refugees fled before the Dutch forces.
See, the Republic adopted a scorched earth policy as refugees. Like, what? Like, what's the purpose of this conflict? Again, I feel like this is a conflict that no one has ever brought up in history books ever. And it's just like most conflicts are like this. Most are just these very minor disagreements between two people, which creates a huge flood of refugees. It's just like, I don't know, it's crazy. It's crazy how countries behaved in this time. I guess this is pre-United Nations, though. I guess that's the point, is like there was no other means by which countries could disagree with one another besides conflict. It's only in the aftermath of the United Nations where countries can actually get together and like negotiate things like this. So I guess that is interesting. But again, to me, it seems like the Netherlands is just trying to take as much money from this place as physically possible.
The Security Council met in emergency session in Paris and again called upon the parties to cease all military operations. It's funny because based on what I saw, it seemed like only one of the parties was really engaging in military action. Now, maybe there was a freedom resistance movement or something. I would totally believe that. But it just seems like one side is causing a lot more problems than the other side. The Council recommended the establishment of an independent United States of Indonesia at the earliest possible date.
An independent United States of Indonesia. I wonder if Indonesia is organized into a series of states like that. Is it the U.S. of Indonesia, or did it end up being something else?
The United Nations Commission was instructed to assist in negotiations. A roundtable conference between the Netherlands and the Indonesian Republic began in The Hague in August 1949.
All right, so wow, this is like the very beginning of Indonesia as like a nation state. Obviously, Indonesia has a history stretching back thousands of years, but this is when the country of Indonesia like took formation. So this is another historic event that we're seeing with the stroke of a pen right here.
With the help of the United Nations Commission, the conference agreed on a charter of transfer of sovereignty and on main points of...
A charter of transfer of sovereignty. So that's kind of what they were arguing about this whole time. It's just who would actually have sovereignty over Indonesia. It's just like, obviously the Indonesians want full sovereignty, and obviously the Dutch don't want to give them that, or else they won't make any more money from them. So it's just like this classic conundrum of colonization and independence movements.
Future cooperation between the Netherlands and the United States of Indonesia.
I really like calling it the United States of Indonesia. I really hope that is a politically accurate term.
The United States of Indonesia, embracing scores of islands and including nearly 80 million people, was a reality.
80 million people, that's interesting because Indonesia now has like 200 million or something. It's the fourth most populous country on Earth. And I wonder if it was still the fourth most populous country on Earth even back then. 80 million doesn't seem like a lot, but at the same time, there were just fewer people back then as well. I also want to just look at this map for a second. So we have Thailand, then we have Indochina, which is Vietnam, Laos, and then we have the Philippine Islands. I like how it's not the Philippines, it's just the Philippine Islands. It's just a funny, turn of phrase still. Oh, and look at Malaya. It's also spelled differently, isn't it? It's Malaya. Doesn't it not have that first Y now? Isn't it just Malaya? I think so. I might be making that up, but I'm pretty sure it's not spelled like this anymore. That's an antiquated spelling of the word Malaya. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's true.
And late in December 1949 at The Hague, Queen Juliana of the Netherlands signed the document
which transferred complete sovereignty over Indonesia to the Republic of the United States of Indonesia and recognized it as an independent nation.
Wow, that's cool. So this is literally the formation of Indonesia as we speak. As we watch right in front of us, Indonesia is becoming a country for the first time. I just hope you all appreciate that sort of stuff, like we're watching history take place before our eyes. Again, like we don't get to watch these scenes for like America or anything, like we don't get to watch the founding fathers sign the Declaration of Independence, but we do get to watch the Queen of the Netherlands signing the sovereignty papers of Indonesia. Like we do actually get to see what it looks like for a nation to gain its own independence from a colonial master. And it's just, we're so lucky that we get to see this sort of stuff. See, wow, isn't that crazy that signature is what gave Indonesia its independence? Like, obviously, it's just ink on a paper, but like that symbolically is what created the independent state of Indonesia.
The question had been peacefully resolved.
All right, here's my big problem with what I've just seen so far. They didn't explain to us what the root of the problem or the disagreement was. So now that we see them signing papers that are some sort of solution, we also don't know what that solution is, right? Like, why did they have all that conflict if they were just going to sign papers later anyway? Like, I want to know what the actual deal was. What were the terms that the Indonesian people originally rejected and eventually accepted? What is in that treaty? Like, I know I could look it up, but I want this to explain it to me because this is a primary source. Like, I actually want to see that information brought to light. And it's unfortunate that they don't actually go into detail as to what these agreements actually were agreeing to. But I have a feeling what they really agreed to was to pay the Netherlands some sort of debt in order for them to have their independence. That's my guess as to what they didn't want to do and what they got strong-armed into doing here.
The subcontinent of India was another...
Oh man, we're moving now though. We're on to India, which is really cool. Look at this map of India. Not only do we have all of India, obviously, we got Pakistan, we got Bangladesh, but we don't have Nepal or Bhutan. That's interesting. So we have an Indian Raj right here. We have a British Raj right here. That's cool. That's very rarely do you get to see maps of this sort of stuff.
The subcontinent of India was another potential trouble spot after World War II.
The subcontinent of India was another potential trouble spot in the aftermath of World War II. I'm very interested by that statement. I certainly agree, but I want to know their reasons for saying that.
Its millions also looked forward to independence after years of passive resistance under British rule.
Its millions also look forward to independence after years of passive resistance to British colonial rule. Yeah, I feel like we've learned enough about India and Indian independence in particular to understand that statement was more or less accurate. It's funny, after all this time, after all these old programs we've watched specifically on India, everything else still checks out. Like, no one's lying here.
Great Britain, following a policy of self-determination of peoples, made plans to give India complete freedom as an independent dominion of the British Commonwealth of Nations. But the question...
Again, like the British Commonwealth of Nations is just such a weird, like, suggestion nowadays. It's just like, yeah, India will be independent, but they'll still be, one of our nations. Like, I don't get the actual purpose of the Commonwealth besides maintaining power over other people. Like, that seems like the express purpose of the Commonwealth is just to maintain some degree of influence over your past colonies.
The question of independence was not simple.
Oh wow, look at this shot. This is a camel dragging a little cart behind them, isn't that? Yeah, it looks like a camel. It looks like they had a little camel dragging a little wagon.
The question of independence was not simple, for it posed another delicate question.
It posed another delicate question, yeah. Indian independence was not so simple as it posed another difficult question. What was that question?
The partition of the subcontinent between Hindu India and Muslim Pakistan.
Between Hindu India and Muslim Pakistan. Again, I love how they say Muslim back then. Muslim. It's so awkward to say it like that, but it's obviously an archaic form of the word. But it is interesting that they're addressing these issues between India and Pakistan. I guess this is another one of the very first issues that the UN helped to figure out.
Meetings were held between Hindu and Muslim
I feel like I recognize this building. Isn't this like the Indian Parliament building or something? I feel like I've seen that in another program before.
leaders. Mahatma Gandhi, great
Oh, there's the big man, Gandhi.
symbol of Indian independence, spoke for Hindu India. Muhammad Ali Jinnah was the Muslim leader in the fight for the independence of Pakistan.
Hang on, this is the Muslim leader of Pakistan? That's interesting. See, that's like, there's so much to be said about what he's wearing and like how he's presenting himself. He's very clearly trying to show himself as like a wealthy, westernized, high status person within this society. It's just, that's so interesting.
Pandit Nehru succeeded to the
Oh,
leadership
that was another important guy. That was like the actual like Indian president or something, wasn't it?
of Hindu India on the death of Gandhi. And on
I'm also going to say that I think next week, based on how many of these I've recorded, next week is going to be August 15th week, or it's going to be the week of the Indian Independence Day. So I think next week I'm going to be watching 4 Indian programs in a row for yellow, green, blue, and red. So just look forward to that if you're Indian, I guess.
under his leadership, the independence of India was proclaimed on
August 15th, 1947, that's the independence of India. We learned that already. I have that fact emblazed in the back of my mind. I'm never going to forget that, though. August 15th, 1947, India's independence. There you go. Say it for me.
15th, 1947.
Oh, there you go. There you go. That's it.
India began
Now I just need to learn who this guy is. I feel like I've already learned about this guy several times, but every single program I've watched has focused a lot more on Gandhi and a lot less on whoever this shadowy figure is. I'm pretty sure he's like the first actual president of India, or prime minister, or whatever you want to call it, but I don't know enough to say that for sure.
an independent republic in the British Commonwealth.
Dude, I love the floor fans. More of these floor fans. That's what I'm calling for, man. I think that's so funny. Every time we see something in India, they have these ceiling fans that are mounted from the floor instead of the ceiling. And it's just, it's the funniest thing every time. Again, I've never seen fans like this outside of these old Indian programs.
Millions of Indians, led by Prime Minister Nehru, celebrated
Prime Minister Nehru. All right, that's who this guy is. Prime Minister Nehru. I have to remember that now. That's the next aspect of Indian history that I need to put in my mind.
the independence of this great nation. The new dominion
Oh, look at the flags, look at the flags. Any interesting flags? This one all the way on the right kind of looks like the old South African flag, but I really can't tell, honestly.
took over the charter membership which India, under British rule,
Yeah, I couldn't tell any of those flags, to be honest.
had held in the United Nations.
Oh, that was an interesting flag. What's that flag up top above these guys? If you guys aren't aware, pretty much like half the reason I even made this channel is because I had to sort through so much of this footage in order to find flag clips of the past. You know, I make videos on Atlas Pro where I talk about, you know, old atlases or whatever. And I used to go searching through so much of this footage just for the 1 or 2 second clips of their flags. So when I pay special attention to the flags when I'm watching these programs, just know that like that's the whole purpose behind all this. Like that's how all this got started. That's how I collected all these old programs, was just searching for old countries' flags and using them in my Atlas Pro videos. So this is kind of like a little bit of the backstory behind this channel. It's just like I need to see these flags through. Like, what is this flag above this one guy? Can somebody take a very good close look at that one flag and tell me what it was? I just can't tell. This is obviously India's flag.
The new Republic of Pakistan consisted of 2 zones in the northwest and northeast corners of the subcontinent.
Yeah, I love that too. I love how we're learning about East and West Pakistan. Like the fact that they were both considered the same country, even though they were on other sides of India. It's just like, I don't know, it's so funny. It's so funny that like somebody suggested that they make these 2 separate countries the same country, and like everyone went along with it for a little bit. But then you get Jammu and Kashmir up here. That's so funny too. It's so funny how like Jammu and Kashmir has been this disputed territory for like nearly 100 years now at this point.
Separated by 1,000 miles of Dominion of India territory. The territorial limits of Pakistan were determined on the...
I really hope they explain that to us at some point. I know we watched a program about Kashmir a while ago now, but that really didn't explain like the princely states or anything. So I maybe we'll get it in this.
basis of the Islamic faith of the majority of its people. Led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, The new Dominion of Pakistan also celebrated its independence on August 15, 1947.
You know, that's pretty funny. I knew India's independence was August 15th, 1947, but I guess I never considered that that is also Pakistan's Independence Day as well. I guess that's just South Asia's Independence Day.
And at Karachi, capital of the new state, the joyous people hailed their new nation.
Well, there it is. That's like the first time the Pakistan flag has ever flown over the independent nation of Pakistan. Like, again, I just want you all to appreciate this isn't just random footage of a flag waving. This is the first time this flag was raised over this nation. This is very monumental events that we're watching take place.
But the partition of India led almost immediately to disputes.
I like that. Yeah, that's pretty true. The partition of India almost immediately led to disputes. Those disputes are still taking place to this day, by the way.
The first of these centered around the independent state of Jammu and Kashmir.
Oh man, we're actually going to get an explanation for Jammu and Kashmir. Let's go!
Which had declared its adherence to the new Dominion of India. Protesting that Pakistan was aiding tribal disorder in Kashmir,
all right, protesting that Pakistan was aiding tribal disorder. That's interesting.
the Dominion of India sent troops into Kashmir, and in this area of the world, there appeared a threat to international peace.
See, this is so interesting because, again, I sort of knew that there was a conflict between India and Pakistan, but I didn't really understand the scale or, like, purpose of it until just now. So we're getting to see the Indian government sending its troops who are, like, fresh out of the meat grinder of Europe, right, fighting the Nazis. All these Indian troops just got back to India, and now they're being sent to Kashmir and Jammu in order to ensure that those end up being part of Indian territory. That's interesting.
Pakistan denied the charges of India and questioned the legality of Kashmir's accession.
This is such a crazy shot. Like, does India really look like this? This looks like a fake set, you know? Like, the hills look too perfectly, like, cut or whatever. The trees look too trim. I don't know. Like, this just does not look like a real place.
To India.
But this is cool. This is cool that we're just getting to see, like, random shots of Kashmir from 1950s, you know? Oh, wow. So, like, an actual real war took place here, too. That's, like, something I didn't quite understand as well. Dang, imagine you sign up to fight Nazis in Europe as an Indian person, and then you get back home and you're also just fighting a war against your own people then? Like, that's such a crazy series of events that took place on the subcontinent.
Continuing thus increased the threat to world peace and brought the dispute to the attention of the United Nations.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, so that's why the United Nations got involved, because they started to dispute over Kashmir. See, what's funny about this is even though the UN stepped in, there still is not a solution to the Jammu-Kashmir problem. Like, there is no map that definitively says, oh, this is India or this is Pakistan. Like, we still don't actually know who controls that land. So whatever solution they came up with, ended up not really solving anything.
The Security Council called upon both parties to terminate hostilities in Kashmir and appointed a commission to work with the two new states toward a peaceful settlement of the dispute. Admiral Chester Nimitz of the United States was appointed to administer a plebiscite in Jammu and Kashmir if all parties to the dispute agreed to this solution of the problem. Meanwhile, India and Pakistan were urged to continue their efforts to reach a peaceful settlement. Prime Minister Liaquat Ali Khan of Pakistan and Prime Minister Nehru of India continued their negotiations with the aid and encouragement of the United Nations.
Wow, it's funny how these guys look like friends together. Like, they're just chilling on the couch. Like, this guy's got his arm up. Like, it's just funny. I don't know. It feels like even though their countries were at war with one another, they weren't all that affected by it.
India continued their negotiations with the aid and encouragement of the United Nations. To the United Nations also came...
Oh boy. All right, here comes probably the most interesting problem we'll encounter during this era. All right, so we're looking at, I guess we're not looking at anywhere. We're looking at Jerusalem. I don't know what to call this nation state at this point in time, right? Like, what do we know? Like, when are we? 1950? All right, so this might be Israel by this point.
The problem of Palestine. a British mandate since the end.
Oh no, they're calling it Palestine still. All right, then it's Palestine. That's an interesting note as well, right? This is before Israel. This is still Palestine.
End of World War I. In recent years, this small country had been the scene of disorder and bloodshed.
In recent years, this small country has been the scene of disorder and bloodshed. Yeah, can say that again.
The age-old struggle between Arab and Jew and
the age-old struggle between Arab and Jew. Again, like they're not saying Muslim, they're saying Arab. Like this is specifically a struggle between Jewish people of the Jewish faith and Arab people of the Arab ethnicity, not of Muslim people. It's just, I don't know. It's weird to hear them state it like that because they also said it like that. I think it was Israel and the Arab states. They've said that in previous programs as well, that it's between the Jews and the Arabs, not the Jews and the Muslims, not the Semites and the other Semites. You know, it's Jews and Arabs always.
The age-old struggle between Arab and Jew and the aspirations of the Jewish people for a homeland.
And the aspiration of the Jewish people for a homeland. Like that's really the main conflict right there.
Aspirations which have been intensified through the persecution of the Jews before and during World War II had aggravated the Palestine problem.
Oh man, here they are picking their oranges. I feel like nobody knows that like Palestine used to have so many oranges back in the day. Like that's something I learned from watching these sorts of programs. It's so interesting that oranges are always seen in Palestine. Like when you watch stuff like this, everyone was always picking oranges.
Persecution of the Jews before and during World War II had aggravated the Palestine problem.
Okay, so the persecution of the Jews in Europe prior to World War II was only creating a greater issue in Palestine as well. That's what they just said. That is very true. But again, look at all these Palestinian farmhands. Like these are real Palestinian people working real jobs in their country. Like, it's so tough to see Palestine functioning as like a society and then knowing what has become of it since. You know, it's such a shame to see how effective and how productive it actually was once upon a time. And how westernized the people were. Again, like look at everything everyone's wearing here. Like no one is wearing like anything besides like a suit and tie.
At a special session, the General Assembly of the United Nations established a special committee on Palestine and sent it to
the Special Committee on Palestine. I bet that committee still exists to this day too.
This troubled area to study the problems and make recommendations.
Yeah, see, this is another problem that the UN just failed to solve. That's so funny how, like, so far we're 1 for 3 on the problems that the UN actually came up with a solution for. Wow, that was a bit of a hard cut, but whatever.
The United Nations Committee spent months in Palestine traveling over the disputed areas and
Dang, look at this old UN flag. That's an impressive flag. See, I was talking earlier about finding old flags. I never had to find a UN flag before, but that's a really good old shot of an old UN flag.
Conferring with Arabs and Jews. The majority of the committee members recommended that Palestine be partitioned into an Arab state and a Jewish state.
All right, hang on. So the majority of the committee members, so the UN assigned a committee with this express purpose of figuring out the solution to the Palestine problem. And the solution that they came up with was to divide it into 2 states, an Arab one and a Jewish one. Again, not a Muslim one, an Arab one and a Jewish one, which is pretty much the 2-state solution. So that's interesting. I guess the 2-state solution had to have come from somewhere. It's interesting that that is the solution that this committee came up with.
And under international control, the city of Jerusalem, the 3 to be linked by economic union. The General Assembly accepted this recommendation.
See, look at this map of Israel, though. You have the West Bank, you have a little Gaza, and then you have a little bit more right next to the Egyptian Sinai Peninsula. These are familiar borders, but they're not exactly the same as they are now.
But the United Nations' job was not yet done. Border clashes increased, and soon open warfare broke out in this troubled area of the world.
Open warfare broke out. Yeah, you can say that again. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but like that's still happening to this day. But you know what? Again, it is interesting to see like what the warfare of this time looked like in this place. You know, like we are actually getting to see the Palestinians being driven out of their homes. And these are the actions that drove them away. There were buildings being destroyed. Like it's the history of this area is so much more understandable when you actually get to watch it take place. I don't know about you guys, but so much of this is just vague history to me. But getting to actually see it, it becomes real and you understand like why these people feared for their lives and why they fled and everything. You get so much better understanding of the context of history by watching this sort of stuff. Like you get a sense of the chaos that enveloped this place for a time. Like you understand why people were so scared and were willing to fight for so long because they just had no idea what else was going to happen. Yeah, it's sad to say, but this is a site straight out of Gaza today as well. Like this doesn't look any different than how this area still looks to this day.
The United Nations continued its efforts for peace, and the General Assembly appointed Count Folke Bernadotte of Sweden as special mediator, and he was charged with negotiating a settlement of the situation in Palestine.
All right, so they assigned this one Swedish guy like the entire responsibility of coming up with a solution to this issue. That's kind of funny. It's funny because definitely no one was able to come up with a solution. You know, it's funny that they thought, well, you can just make this decision for us. You know, like this one random guy is just going to decide what the right thing to do in this scenario is that he's not even related to. Like, I get that he's unbiased in his decision, or at least he's unbiased, but like, it's also like, how can you make an unbiased decision when like you don't even know what these people are arguing about, you know?
Count Bernadotte devoted himself to meetings with the Arabs and the Jews and was finally successful in arranging a truce.
Oh wow, this guy arranged a truce between the Arabs and the Israelis. That's interesting. I wonder what this truce was.
While striving for a basis for permanent peace in Palestine, Count Bernadotte was assassinated by terrorists in Jerusalem.
He was assassinated by terrorists? Wow, that's intrigue. I did not know about that. So that's very interesting. So this guy, whose whole job was to figure out a solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict, says that he figured it out, but then got assassinated by terrorists in Jerusalem. That's definitely the winding road of history for you.
The world mourned the first United Nations casualty in the struggle for world peace.
Wow, that's crazy. The first UN casualty. Like, this guy's purpose was to serve the United Nations, and he got killed for it. That's another historic moment. Wow, I didn't realize that, but that's crazy. But again, if anything, this just illustrates how different of a conflict the Israel-Palestine issue is, right? Like, none of these other conflicts resulted in the assassination of the guy in charge of the decision, you know? Only here in this scenario where the situation was so extreme that they assassinated somebody for it. That just goes to show how difficult this situation is to solve.
Truce arranged by Count Bernadotte was broken, and violence again spread throughout the disputed areas of Palestine.
Yeah, the unfortunate part is that, like, the violence that spread as a result of this assassination was most likely directed straight towards the Palestinians. Like, the Palestinians definitely suffered. Even if he was assassinated to avoid whatever solution he had come up with for the Palestinians, I feel like we can all agree the solution they actually got was probably likely a lot worse. Dude, there's something so crazy about seeing people like fighting in a gunfight with just like t-shirts on, you know, like there's a difference between seeing a soldier in like the soldier gear and just like seeing civilians shooting at each other. Like that's really what was taking place during this time. There was no Palestinian army, you know, there were just civilians defending their farmland. Maybe there was a Palestinian army, actually. I take that back. But for the most part, this was all like guerrilla warfare and just like small local skirmishes. So it's just, it's very different type of war than all the other wars that we've been seeing.
Dr. Ralph J. Bunch of...
Dang, I love how you can literally see the cigar smoke floating around in this room. Like that's that's another just very antiquated scene. It's just men sitting in like a circular or like a round table just smoking their hearts out. or smoking their lungs out, really.
The United States was appointed acting mediator and continued the efforts of Count Bernadotte to find a solution. Through Dr. Bunch's negotiations as mediator, final treaties were signed and peace came to the troubled Holy Land.
Wow. All right, so final treaties were signed. It sounds like they figured out some sort of solution and they signed a treaty. This is news to me because it does not seem like they have a treaty in place right now. So this is interesting. I wonder what the terms of this treaty were. But even the fact that we got the Israelis and Palestinians in a room together and they both signed a treaty, like that's, I don't know, that feels notable to me.
The state of Israel had been proclaimed. And the people...
Oh, that was the creation of Israel right there? Okay, so maybe, I don't know. I feel like I've watched enough programs about this to like know that the Palestinians really just got royally screwed over in that signature.
People rejoiced in their new nation, a haven of refuge for the displaced and...
Because if I remember correctly, this created the nation-state of Israel, but it did not create the nation-state of Palestine. For some reason, Palestine never got like founded in the same way that Israel did, or it got invaded. I know some funny business took place here.
Persecuted members of the Jewish faith from all over the world. Israel...
Yeah, but you can't imagine the excitement that Jewish people in like Tunisia or Morocco must have felt from this news, right? Like they were getting kicked out of their homes and they finally had a place to flee to. It's just like, I don't know, that's what makes Israel such a complex place, because it is just a place that refugees have gone to. And yet the refugees are causing such a problem that they're creating new refugees. You know, it's just, it's such a difficult nut to crack, really.
Was admitted to membership in the United Nations, and her flag was raised at Lake Success. Again, the United Nations had, through peaceful mediation, resolved an international dispute.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Can we listen to that again? Again, the United Nations, through peaceful remediations, led to a solution. Like, hey, I got bad news for these guys.
Membership in the United Nations, and her flag was raised at Lake Success. Again, the United Nations had, through peaceful mediation...
Again, the United Nations had, through peaceful negotiations...
resolved an international dispute.
Solved an international dispute. These people that we see clapping think that the Palestine question has been answered. They think that this problem is solved and they will never have to worry about it again. That is so crazy to me. Like, they really do. They believe that this problem no longer is a problem because Israel exists. It's just, oh wow, that's so crazy.
Which had been a threat to world peace.
And it's also so funny just to hear them patting themselves on the back for this one. It's like, really, guys? Like, had you had any foresight, you might have expected this deal might not stay in place for that long. But I don't know. It's just funny that they didn't even anticipate that deal not lasting at all, you know?
The problem of Korea also...
Oh, the problem of Korea. All right. So it's funny to see, like, all these issues or all these conflicts that I am familiar with. Like this is the melting pot of those issues, right? This is the immediately post World War II quagmire that like pretty much the entire world existed in, where there were all these different questions of borders because, you know, the Korean borders had been redrawn by the Japanese Empire. There was this period where all these borders that had been decided on by these, you know, colonial powers were all of a sudden being re-examined and, you know, redrawn. And Korea was one of the places where that happened. But obviously we can see that during this time, this sort of conflict and redrawing of the borders was pretty much happening like all over the globe. Like that's really what I'm learning from this, is the post-World War II moment really required a lot of solutions, a lot of political solutions, or else there would have been a lot more conflicts. It's just crazy to see how many problems needed to be dealt with in the aftermath of World War II. It's not like everything was just perfect and solved after World War II ended. It's actually, there were more problems and more potential conflicts that could have arisen had there not been something like the UN, or even if there was the UN, you know, all of these conflicts like the Korean War still happened even with the UN. So obviously the UN wasn't that effective, but it was definitely necessary.
problem of Korea also seemed ideally suited to peace.
Korea also seemed ideally suited for a peaceful settlement. That's so funny how they're saying, like, yeah, Korea seems like a place that's just one place. It doesn't seem like there should be that much difference between the people on this one small peninsula. But it's just not how it is, I guess.
Settlement under United Nations auspices. In September 1947, the United States submitted the question of Korean independence to the General Assembly. A United Nations commission was appointed.
So hang on, now I'm kind of curious just how the UN even works. So somebody had to submit the question of Korean nationhood to the UN, and somebody had to decide if Korea was one country, two countries, or no countries. This was the very beginning of like diplomacy actually working on an international scale like this. So it's interesting to even hear the mechanisms they had in place, or like how to even like file the paperwork for your country to become a real country. It's just, this is very early days for all that sort of stuff.
To forward the establishment of a free, democratic government of Korea through nationwide elections. The Soviet, previously pledged to Korean independence, now refused to participate in the work of this commission.
Oh, interesting. So the Soviets took themselves out of the negotiations for establishing a free and democratic Korea. So that's probably the origin of the Korean War, right? Like the US and the UN wanted to create another stable democratic society, whereas the USSR wanted to create a communist society. So they didn't agree with the UN on this particular issue, and that's, I think, where the conflict arose. That's interesting. I'm glad I have that context and understanding of the Korean War now.
This policy of obstruction was not new. In Seoul, capital of Korea, the 2 previous years had seen fruitless meetings between the Soviet and United States military commanders.
Oh, that's interesting. So the US and the USSR had been meeting for 2 years previously to this, trying to figure out some sort of deal for sharing Korea and making it a peaceful country. That's very interesting. I don't really know much about the Korean War or why it took place. So it's interesting to see so much thought and effort being put into figuring out the solution for this place.
Soviet obstruction had resulted in the permanent and tragic division of the Korean people at the 38th.
Soviet obstruction resulted in the permanent and tragic division of the Korean people. I wonder if that's propaganda or like an accurate statement. Like, I'm pretty sure in America that's an accurate statement, but I wonder what the Russians would say about that. Like, what's the other side of that argument? Like, why did the Russians or the Soviets not agree to let that happen? You know, I bet they have a reason that to them seems perfectly logical, even if to me it seems like they were just creating conflicts. I wonder what their reasoning in their own heads was.
Parallel, which had been originally established only as a temporary boundary for administrative purposes.
See, that's also crazy that the 38th parallel was only ever envisioned as a very temporary border between these two very similar nations. Or I guess at this point it was one nation, it just had two sides to it.
The chief task of the newly created United Nations Commission was to obtain cooperation from the Soviet authorities in establishing a united, independent Republic of Korea.
See, the chief task of the UN was to achieve the cooperation of the Soviets. I feel like that's a very pointed statement as well.
This task was made impossible by Soviet refusal to allow...
A task made impossible by Soviet refusal.
...the Commission to cross the 38th parallel, and Soviet refusal to cooperate in any way.
Oh wow, look at this. This is an early South Korean flag. I wish this was in color so we could see the blue and the red, but that's cool. That's cool to see a South Korean flag all the way back then.
Only in South Korea were free elections under the impartial supervision of the Commission possible. Here, true to its pledges.
Hang on, this is interesting. Welcome to the UN Korean Commission. That is interesting. That is cool to see that like democracy was being established in Korea. And it's also interesting to understand that the Soviets were sort of against this, or at least they were against it in the way that it was being carried out by the UN and the US.
The United Nations assisted in the creation of an independent nation based on the freely expressed will of the people.
Based on the freely expressed will of the people. See, yeah, it's very interesting. I'm picking up on a little propaganda here. This seems like we are definitely completely ignoring like the Soviet argument behind this, and it seems like we're fully embracing like the free world's argument for the Koreas, which I don't disagree with. I don't disagree that Korea should be like a free and democratic place, but I'm curious why the Soviets disagreed. Because to them, they obviously thought that it should be free as well. They just thought freedom was through communism rather than capitalism or something like that.
Soviet obstruction had prevented the participation of all Koreans in a unified republic.
I feel like that was another important statement. Soviet obstruction is what prevented all of Koreans from being accounted for. It's just, it feels very purposefully the Soviets. I wonder if that's still the accepted narrative, that it's just all the faults of the Soviets.
But a republic there was. The newly elected government continued the work of the United States military government, which had voluntarily resigned its powers to the new nation. Land reform.
See, it seems like the US was doing like everything in its power to create a free country. To like go hands off with their military, say like, hey, it's their turn to take over for themselves. Like it feels like the US was in the right on this one at least. I don't know if that's again just the propaganda that I'm drinking down or if that's the actual facts of the matter. For now, I'm on the sides of the Americans for this conflict.
Education, public safety, and many other projects were now the concern of the new government. The people of the Republic of Korea settled down to the pursuits of peace.
The people of the Republic of Korea settled down to the pursuits of peace. That's another good statement. Are these all shots from Korea? Is this what Korea looked like in the 50s? I'd be impressed. I did not expect all these like stone pillars and everything. Like this is a very westernized city by the looks of it. Yeah, that was a funny little sound effect animation right there. The thunder with the arrows pointing, that was good. I liked that little note. Dang, I feel like I've seen these shots too, these flashing bursts of like artillery fire. I feel like I saw these in a previous program as well.
Suddenly and without warning, the communist-controlled North Koreans hurled themselves upon their peaceful neighbors to the south.
Suddenly and without warning, so the communist North Koreans launched a surprise attack on the democratic South Koreans. And again, I wonder if that's propaganda or if that's true. Did the North Koreans really make the first move to conquer the South? I bet that's true. That sounds about true. I wonder how much of it is really just like, I don't know, he said, she said sort of stuff.
And in an act of stark and unprovoked aggression, attempted the destruction.
Like, how unprovoked was it, Like, was it truly unprovoked, or were we just shooting artillery at their side before they ever attacked, Like, I want to believe what they're saying. I want to drink. I really want to drink the propaganda that they're giving me. I don't know. I don't know if it's true or not.
Destruction of the Republic. The peaceful citizens of the Republic of Korea, torn from their homes, separated from their families, formed the long and miserable lines of refugees, which are always the first fruit of ruthless conquest.
Long and miserable lines of refugees, which are always the first fruit of conquest. That's another very, very heavy statement that they just dropped on us, but very true too. So I guess at this time there must have been like a huge migration of people down from the middle of Korea, either south or north. I wonder if that still affects the country to this day. Oh wow, look at these little kids. That's funny. This kid's in like a military uniform.
The United Nations Security Council met in emergency session at Lake Success to take action on the North Korean aggression. The Soviet Union chose to be absent. The council quickly...
Dang, I love that shot of the empty USSR seat. Like, I really like to think that that shot was taken when this council convened for this purpose. Like, this actually was the shot of the empty USSR chair. Like, I really hope that was. Because that says a lot, right? If they're unwilling to even show up to negotiate with this sort of stuff, then it kind of seems like they were the issue. If the US is there and everyone else is there, except for the Soviets, it seems like it's on the Soviets at this point.
The council quickly dispatched a ceasefire order to the North Korean regime. This order was ignored. The council then voted for United Nations military action against the invaders.
The council voted for United Nations military actions against them. See, this is what I was saying when we watched combat activity in Korea, right? I was so shocked that the soldiers were not American soldiers, they were United Nations soldiers. But now we're getting to see the context behind those orders. This is the creation of that UN offensive that we were watching. That's what they referred to it as, is the UN counteroffensive. So what we're seeing here is the actual committee agreeing to launch that offensive.
General Douglas MacArthur.
Yeah, here's MacArthur. He's the guy who said we should just nuke it all.
Was named Commander-in-Chief of the United Nations forces in Korea.
Commander-in-Chief of the United Nations forces in Korea. So not only was he a U.S. military general, he was actually the general of the United Nations military, or at least in this conflict. That's interesting. I didn't know that either.
And after visiting the battlefront, he accepted the first United Nations battle flag to be flown.
The first United Nations battle flag. Is that another oxymoron? United Nations battle flag? I think that is. That's totally an oxymoron. But I love the idea that the UN has a battle flag. Like, that's just... did no one get the irony back then? Was nobody laughing to themselves thinking, why does the United Nations have a battle flag? That's so funny to me. What does it even look like? Let's see.
By the United Nations forces fighting the communist invaders.
Is it just a regular UN flag with like some frills around its edges? That's kind of boring. But it's funny that we have a battle flag regardless.
For 5 weeks, as Korean Republican and United States forces under the United Nations flag fought to stem the tide of North.
Okay, so they just admitted exactly what I was hoping they'd admit, that most of these United Nations soldiers were just American soldiers with the UN logo slapped on their helmets, and the only other soldiers were the South Koreans. So not to mention that old program again, but when we saw all of the military equipment with the UN logo, we should be able to understand that that's mostly just American military right there. That's not the United Nations military, it's the United States military acting under the approval of the United Nations. That's an important distinction to make. These are all American soldiers in Korea right now.
Korean communist aggression, while the Security Council took all emergency steps in an effort to halt that aggression, the delegate of the Soviet Union pointedly absented himself from the United Nations deliberations and decisions.
Yeah, honestly, the more they say that, the more I'm thinking it was the Soviets who really caused this conflict. They really just did not want any part of the negotiations to end it, and they were definitely happy to continue fueling the conflict towards the end goal of conquering all of Korea. So it seems like the Soviets are to blame for this one.
Improvising the defense of the Republic of Korea, and with the heroic help of the Republican fighting forces, the United Nations troops fought and fell back, trading space for time until more help could arrive.
That's interesting. The United Nations fought and fell back to create more time. So they're talking about the period where the North almost entirely conquered the South.
On August 1st, Soviet delegate Jacob Malik, for the first time since the invasion, returned to take his seat in the Security Council. It was the turn of the Soviet to preside. Malik, deliberately ignoring the North Korean communist aggression, began a systematic campaign as president to block any action on the Korean War by the Security Council.
Block any action on the Korean War by the UN Security Council. Okay, so now the Soviets are actively obstructing the process for finding a solution to this conflict. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna blame the Korean War on the Soviets now. Now that I know this whole backstory, it really does seem like the Soviets caused it. Like, I guess the US and the UN could have backed down and just let Russia have its way. That's just no way to operate the United Nations, you know? You can't just strong arm the United Nations like that. But at the same time, the United Nations also kind of just seems like the US's like lapdog. Like, it just seems like they're trying to enforce whatever the US wants to enforce as well. I don't know if that's entirely true, but that's how it seems based on this as well. So I kind of understand why the Soviets just stopped listening to the UN after a while.
Meanwhile, the United Nations troops battled the Soviet-armed communist invaders, and the Security Council tried without success to prod the Soviet delegate to his responsibilities.
This is a great image of the Soviet delegate, just like giving a nothing face.
As August Day followed August Day, the United Nations continued its fight in Korea. In the Security Council, the Soviet delegate sat impassive, rendering impotent the Council's efforts to end the bloodshed in Korea.
Dang, shout out to this guy's rifle number, man. Yeah, so it really seems like the Soviets were just delaying a decision so that they could get their armies to advance as deep into South Korea as possible. I think that's their strategy for this. They thought that if they just took the entire peninsula, then this issue would go away. But they never did, so this issue never went away. Which is interesting to think about. Had the Americans totally abandoned Korea, there would be a united Korea nowadays. It would just be communist.
As August waned, United States Delegate Warren Austin, in righteous wrath,
Dang, hang on. So this was happening August 1947. That's pretty crazy. That's a whole lot of different world events taking place all at the same time, actually. That's wild.
but in simple terms, made clear for all the world to see the sinister actions of the enemies of democracy.
The sinister actions of the enemies of democracy. Yeah, we are very clearly painting the Soviets as the bad guys here. That sort of language is kind of what makes this propaganda to me. To not even understand that the Soviets had their own nuanced view of it all, just to call them like evil enemies of democracy, like that's the propagandistic language for you.
Whose troops are attacking deep in somebody else's territory? The North Koreans. Whose territory is overrun by an invading army? The Republic of Korea. Who is assisting the Republic of Korea to defend itself? The United Nations. With the support.
Yeah, so he's just laying it out plain and simple. He's saying the Soviets, the communists, they're attacking and we're supporting the people who are defending themselves. So we're in the right and you're in the wrong. Doesn't matter if you're attacking for the right reasons. It doesn't matter if we're defending for the wrong reasons. All that matters is that we're defending and you're attacking. So you're the bad guys.
Support of 53 of the 59 members. Who has the influence and the power to call off the invading North Korean army? The Soviet Union. Who is responsible?
This is a really impressive speech. I actually like that they just gave such a plain, cut and dry, here's the reasons, here's who to blame, it's you,
For the bombing and bloodshed that inevitably ensued from the fact of aggression. The North Koreans and those who support them. Who then can stop the bombing and the bloodshed? The North Koreans and those who support their aggression.
So I guess their argument is because the North Koreans are the ones engaging in this conflict, they're also the ones in power to stop the conflict from happening, which I guess is true and not true. It's well, the conflict is only still happening because you gave weapons to the South Koreans that they could use to fight back the North Koreans. If you didn't do that, North Koreans would have won. But again, it's well, if the North Koreans only got their weapons from the Soviets, then it's kind of fair to give the South Koreans weapons from the Americans. It's just it's such a back and forth, there is no right answer, really. That's the only true answer, is there is no right answer.
What member of the Security Council is supporting the North Korean regime in the Security Council? The Soviet Union.
I really do appreciate how this guy's laying it all out, though. It definitely, if it's not convincing me, it's definitely illustrating the American point of view, or at least the American thought process behind our actions in Korea. Just by listening to him, I am understanding why Americans thought it was necessary for them to send soldiers to Korea. That's really what I wanted to learn about the Korean War, is why we even fought it in the first place. And through this, I'm starting to understand.
Who then is supporting the United Nations Charter and really working for peace? The 53 members of the United Nations who are supporting the Republic of Korea. Is the Soviet Union one of the 53? No.
No, not the Soviet Union.
Oh, that was a cool flag. We're about to get a good montage of good flags, so let's take this very slowly.
Not the Soviet.
Oh, hang on. So that was Afghanistan's flag, right? That's the old, it looks like the old Afghanistan flag. I can't quite tell. What flag is this? Oh, I can't tell this either. Whoa, it has a weird face, though. This honestly looks like the flag of, Uruguay or something. This second flag.
But the 50th.
Oh, and then we get the flag. Is this Australia or New Zealand? I think it's Australia because the stars are white, right? I think that's the case. What a random bunch of flags we just saw. Australia, Uruguay. Oh, it might not be Uruguay. It might be Argentina. We might just be going alphabetically then. Okay. If we got Afghanistan, Argentina, and Australia, yeah, I think we're just going alphabetically. Oh, that's France. What is that? What country was that? Oh, come on. That looks like Peru or something. That's Brazil. Shout out to Brazil for not having changed its flag at all. Still an iconic flag Brazil has. This flag did kind of look changed. The Brazil flag has this constellation. It looks like the constellation is connected or a little different, but I'm sure it's the same. What is this flag? Oh man, this is Burma's flag, isn't it? This is a flag that is no longer flying, but I'm pretty sure this is like Burma's flag or like Siam's flag. I'm pretty sure this is the old flag of Burma. Maybe, no, I think it is. I think this is the old Burma flag, or at least it's an old Southeast Asian flag. I've seen this flag in one of my old atlases before. I think I've even included this in a video I've made. So yeah, I think this is like the old Burma flag. Oh, what flag is this? This is like the old, like, Canadian flag, is it? Oh my gosh, hang on, no. I think so. I think this is like the old Canadian flag right here, right? The modern Canadian flag only came around in the 60s. So this might be the old Canadian flag. It might be like Fiji or New Zealand as well, but I think this is the old Canadian flag. Somebody who's Canadian, let me know if this is actually Canada's old flag or not. Oh, that's Chile's flag. That's an easy one. Is this Taiwan or is this China? Oh, that's funny because China and Taiwan hadn't quite figured out what they were at this point. So this might have been China's flag or Taiwan's flag, but it definitely was not communist China's flag. This is definitely like free capitalist China's flag or something. That's interesting. I really like that we got to see this flag as well. What flag is this? This flag might be something in South America. I'm getting yellow, blue, and red from this flag. So this might be like Colombia or Venezuela or Ecuador. I don't know which one it is, but I'm pretty sure this is a South American. It's probably Colombia's flag. Venezuela's flag has stars, so that's probably Colombia's. What flag is this? Hang on. This flag kind of reminds me of Costa Rica's flag. I can't tell based on the colors because it's all black and white, but this kind of looks like Costa Rica's flag. Oh, there's Cuba's flag. We know that one. Or is that, hang on, no. Is that Puerto Rico or is that Cuba? I think that's Cuba, actually. And there's the Nordic Cross. I guess that could be Sweden or Norway or Iceland or Denmark. But there you go. There's the Nordic Cross for you. Oh, no way. They included like the Dominican Republic. That's so funny. Are we really going to get every single country that was in the UN? That's actually super exciting. See, I told you guys I needed old flags. If I knew there was a scene that showed me every single old flag in the UN at this time, this is like such a valuable little clip for me to have found. Like I haven't found this before, and it's just like, oh, it's so cool. I really hope that's what we get to see. Just every single flag that was being flown during this time. We have a minute left. Maybe we can make it work. Oh, okay, so this is another South American country. This is probably Ecuador's. Maybe Venezuela's, but I think this is Ecuador's. And this one, oh, I can't tell that one. No, that one's too hard to tell. That one, oh, I can't tell. Most of them are just colors with a little symbol in the middle, so I can't really figure out those. Oh, Greece. All right, we got Greece. We got, what country is this? Is this Mexico? It sort of looks like Mexico, but not really. I can't tell. It might be like, I don't know. Is that Mexico or not? What country is this? Oh, no way. Is this Haiti? Or, yeah. I think so. I think this is Haiti with their white image over their flag. That's so funny. I think this is the old Haiti flag. It's funny because they still have a pretty similar flag now. Their icon is just smaller, but it's still all on a white background. That's funny. Oh, what flag is this? This 5 stars on this. Oh man, that's such a tough flag. Is this like Honduras or something? I feel like this is a Central American flag. Oh, okay, so this is Norway's flag. So that other one, that was probably Sweden's flag, but this is definitely Norway's. Or Iceland, maybe. I think it's Norway's, though. Oh, that's India's. There's India's flag for you. Oh, I think this is Iran's flag. Or no, Ethiopia's flag. I think this is the flag of the Empire of Ethiopia. Or it could be Iran. I know both of them had lions holding swords on their flags once upon a time, but I think this is Ethiopia's flag. This is somewhere in the Middle East. This is like Trucial Oman. This is like Muscat and Oman. It's something like that. This flag, this is probably pretty hard for Evan to edit because he has no idea what flag I'm actually looking at. But I'm pretty sure this is from the Middle East somewhere. Oh, there's Israel's flag for you. Yeah, we all know that one. Oh, there's Lebanon's flag too. That's, I think this is Liberia's flag? Maybe. This could be Austria's flag or somewhere else's. I have no idea. It could be Italy's flag for all I know. Or no, Hungary's flag. One of the two. Okay, no, this is the Mexican flag. So I don't know what that other flag was, but this is definitely Mexico's flag. This could be like Egypt's flag. I don't know. Again, like without the colors, it's hard to tell what half of these are. Okay, this is interesting. This is definitely not Australia's flag. This could be New Zealand's, but I'm pretty sure New Zealand has a slightly different flag as well. So maybe it's just another southern British colony. Now, it's probably New Zealand's flag. Oh, this is like another tricolor with like a pyramid. Is this Nicaragua's flag? I think this is Nicaragua's flag. Oh, okay, so here's another. This might be Iceland or Norway. I don't know, one of the two. It's hard to tell Iceland or Norway just without any color, you know? There's Pakistan's flag, Panama's flag. What flag is this? Hang on. I don't know. That's another hard one that I don't know. Okay, hang on. What is this one? Oh, this one looks like it's in Africa or something. I can't tell. I really can't tell. Can some of you guys actually spend the time and let me know where all these flags come from? Because some of these are like really interesting and I've never seen some of them before. So this is like a fun little challenge at the end of this. This is the Philippines, I think. It might be like Czechoslovakia, but I think this is the Philippines. Oh, wow, look at Saudi Arabia's flag. Wow, that's so funny. It's pretty much the same, but it's a little different. That's so cool. That's so cool how that's an old Saudi Arabian flag. Wow. This flag, I think, is Thailand. Is this the Thailand's flag? I think that's what it is. It's hard to tell without the colors again, but I'm pretty sure that's Thailand, or Siam, maybe. Okay, yeah, here's another Nordic cross. I don't know for who. Oh, okay, this has got to be like the United Arab Emirates or like Iraq or something. Another Middle Eastern country for sure. Oh, here's Turkey's flag, the red with the moon. Okay, there we go. Oh, wow, here we go. Here is South Africa's flag. This is like the old like Voortrekker flag or whatever. That's crazy. This is like an offensive image in South Africa now. There's the British flag. There you go. Oh, and here's the U.S. How many stars? Probably 48, right? Probably 48. What flag is this? Oh, is that Uruguay or is that? Yeah, I think that's Uruguay. Oh, and there's Venezuela. Oh, we totally have been going alphabetically. Now that I think about it, yeah, we're getting to Uruguay, United Nations, USA. Okay, yeah, Venezuela. Okay, yeah, we've been going alphabetically this whole time, I think. What flag is this? Holy moly, hang on. I've never seen this flag. Oh, man. That's another good question. Guys, let me know what flag this is. It's got a sword and 5 stars. Evan, make sure you include this. I'm so curious about this flag. It has to be like Oman or something based on this. Oh, and this is the UN's flag. That's funny. Look how funny the map on the UN flag is, though. I guess it probably still looks like this, but it's a little bit more imperfect than I would imagine. Oh, is this going to be the last shot? Yeah, this makes sense as the last shot. All right, the Armed Forces Screen Report. All right, so this was prepared, it seems like by the US government itself. So obviously that's part of the propaganda, right? They were trying to make the American perspective of all these conflicts seem to be the favorable one. And whatever opinion the Soviets had, that was always portrayed as, you know, the bad opinion. Not that that's right or wrong, it's just like now we can understand the context that this was created in. Okay, yeah, that's the end. So that was a very interesting program. This, again, is like the definition of what a red video on this channel is supposed to be. This is exploring like 3 or 4 different world disputes and how the United Nations navigated them all. This is like, yeah, this is perfect red material right here. So we got to see, what was the first one? Oh, we got to see Indonesia become a country. We got to see India become a country and Pakistan. We got to see, what was the third one? Oh, we got to see Israel, we got to see Israel-Palestine conflict, and we got to see the Korean conflict. So yeah, this was a very comprehensive production on like all the world disputes at the time. More than anything, this is just illustrating how many disputes were taking place simultaneously around the world. You know, there was one in India, there was one in Indonesia, there was one in Japan, there was one in Korea, there was one in Israel, there was one everywhere, you know? There were disputes everywhere during this time, mostly as a result of collapsing colonial empires. And I guess it fell onto the plate of the United Nations to figure out most of these conflicts. This is such an interesting report because we get to see the very beginning of the UN. Like, this is the purpose of the United Nations, was to solve these exact sorts of conflicts, which is kind of ironic considering how few of these solutions actually lasted up until the modern day. I guess two of them did, right? Indonesia is still an independent country, and India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh are still their own countries too. Israel and Palestine, that one's questionable. Korea, that one's also a little questionable, whether or not the UN actually solved any problems on those. But overall, just seeing like how this world worked and like everything that needed to be done in order to at least go in the direction of peace, it's so mind-blowing to see like how everything happened and why, you know? This is one of the programs that just helps you understand how people felt during this time, how people were scared of changing times, how people were scared of armies coming across their borders. It's just like, this is the very beginning of like world peace, really. And not even that we achieved world peace, but this is the very first step we as a collective human society ever even took in the direction of world peace. You know, like before this, no conflicts were settled with anything besides weapons. But this is like the very first time that we are actually trying and succeeding at solving conflicts and disputes with our work. You know, like this is the very beginning of world peace even being possible. So it's so incredible that we get to watch this all taking place and get to understand the context of it all. This is also just so important if you want to understand modern geopolitics. Like, so much of the system that countries are operating around and under has been formed as a result of all this. This is the very earliest time that we were working with other nations for the purpose of peace. And I just feel like that is so special and it's so worth acknowledging, you know? That's really more than anything. I'm trying to make you all appreciate what we just watched. This is like the very first time peace was on the table. And I just feel like we need to appreciate that. So hopefully you did. And if you enjoyed watching this and would like to help support what I do here, you can follow the link on screen that'll take you over to the Internet Archive. The Internet Archive is where I get all these old programs from. So if you want to support me and what I do here, go donate to them. And with that, I think we're ready to cut to black.